And hopefully we're live. So today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2:30 p.m. Joining me today is Steve from Allianz Insurance. Hi, Steve. Steve
Hello.
is from North Carolina. A little bit of housekeeping. We have a few sessions for this week. Tomorrow we have a session with Norwegian Cruise Line, and then Thursday we have our media session, how to pitch the media with Jen Lee. I think that we're on. I'm trying to see if our live has started, because sometimes it takes a little bit of time until it posted. But yes, it is live, and we actually have already 12 people on the line. So hello, everyone. I'm going to give Steve the stage so he can introduce himself. He has a nice presentation for us. We're going to try and do a presentation that we haven't done before in a few files. So let's start. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Roy. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite. Boy, what crazy times we're in right now. As you can imagine, I feel like I'm a newscaster because I'm on these Facebook Lives, WebEx, Zoom, you name it. So feeling a little bit like a celebrity right now. But anyhow, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to go through a few different things in my slideshow about Allianz and about some of the policies, our popular policies, some frequently asked questions, especially now, that I think will be very relative to what many of you are asking, and your clients are more importantly asking. So hopefully I can solve some of these situations and answer some of your questions. I will go ahead and go through the slideshow, and please hold your questions if you don't mind. And then because I think I'll answer many of them through the slideshow, and then we can go ahead and ask away at the end of the slideshow. Okay?
All right, perfect.
All right. So without any further ado, right?
Just 1 second, Steve. We're actually having an issue with the sound. Just one
Okay.
second. Can everyone hear us with the sound now? Just 1 second. Yes, I think we fixed it. Just 1 second. All right, I think we fixed the sound. I'm sorry about that. Again, still learning how we're sharing. So let's start with this session again. I'm sorry with the slide, and sorry. Take it away.
Okay. So just briefly, Steve Lowe with Allianz. I manage the 7 southeastern states of the United States, and I also do national accounts with several host agencies around the United States. Quick recap, a quick overview on what Allianz is. We're actually the 22nd largest company in the world. We have an 800,000 provider network, which is huge, and we deal with many, many hospitals and vet them on a continual basis to make sure that the expertise that they have is what your patient needs. So if there's a cardiac care department there or not, depending on what your client needs, we'll send them to the appropriate hospital based off of the vetting that we do on a consistent basis. We do have a 20-person in-house nurses and doctors that do virtual rounds for those most acute cases around the globe. So we'll actually consult with the attending physician or nurses to make sure that your clients are getting the best care possible for what they need for their treatment. And if not, we'll absolutely put them in the right places at different hospital necessary transfers and so forth to make sure they get the best care they possibly can get. The third part here is unique assistance. With the amount of experience we have, we originally started out as a assistance company and then morphed into an insurance and assistance company. So we've been doing this for decades. And in those decades, there's been multiple different major events that have happened. Nothing quite like this one, though, with COVID-19. But with our past experiences that some of our competitors do not have, we were able to respond accordingly and be able to be on point when things are happening and adjust to make sure that we are offering and doing what we can to be as flexible as possible to help insureds out when they're in these dire situations. Biggest thing that we have focused on is making sure that we are providing the best care and customer support that possible within our industry. As you can see, these scores here are pretty big numbers. Customer satisfaction at 97 is really strong. The NPS score, if you're not familiar with that, NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. And at 78, it's a very, very high number for the insurance industry. The average score in the insurance industry is 28, and we're doing a 78, which is something I'm really proud of. And when I first came on board with the company, I was blown away by seeing that, because each separate industry has their own ranking and score. So that being that high above the normal is really, really extraordinary. We have 44 global offices. We're in a lot of different countries, and we speak well over 70 languages, which helps out a lot in not only taking care of medical concerns, but for assistance concerns. You know, if someone doesn't speak the language, they need help, they call Allianz and we'll help them. And this number really blew me off the board at 140 million that we help every year, which that's a lot. And we by far are the largest out there when it comes to providing travel protection. Here's our most popular products here, side by side. I hope you can see these okay. I can zoom in if need be. So, Roy, can you see these okay?
Trying to see on, kinda. That's not so well. I think it's a little small.
How's that?
I guess it's a little better.
Okay. So
there
this
are
compares
links later that we can. Oh yeah, this is better. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. Probably a little lag there and getting it better. Okay. So looking at these four policies, the most popular plan is Classic, and it really is really the breadwinner, I guess, of all our plans. And if you look at Classic and Premier, our top two programs here, and the basic difference from Premier to Classic is that Premier is twice the coverage or benefits that Classic is in many key areas. So if you take a look, it says it's small online. I can go to a different slide if this is not really.
But we can see it. For now, we can see it.
Okay, good. So as I was saying, Premier is double the coverage and benefits in key areas. Looking at emergency medical dental coverage, goes from 25,000 to 50,000 per person. You look at the emergency transportation, which includes medevac, from $500,000 to $1 million. And if you look at the travel delay, it goes from 800 to 1,600, and the threshold is 5 hours on Classic, which means you'd have to be delayed 5 hours, covered delay for 5 hours to qualify for this, as opposed to 3 hours for Premier. And several of the other areas are double as well. So that's an easy way to think about it. And those are some of the differences. There's others that I'd be happy to point out to you, but those are our two main plans right there. And a good best practice that I'd like to share with you all would be to open up by selling Premier first. And if someone balks at it and not willing to pay that price, then it's a little bit less for Classic. Now, you would think being double of the key benefits in many areas it would be much more expensive. Well, I was too, but it's not that much more expensive in most cases, very surprisingly enough. So bottom line here is I would quote both, see what the price differences are, recommend Premier first. If they balk, go down to Classic. And that's a good best practice along the way because they'll be getting an amazing experience in case something, some emergency situation pops up while they're on the road. They'd rather drive the Lexus than they would the Toyota in that scenario, and making sure that they get the best they possibly can out there. So as we go down through Premier and Classic right now, then I'll talk about Cancel Anytime and Basic. So some of the differences here that you'll see within our product, like travel delay, for example, I was talking about that before. So with Classic, it's 5 hours. Let's just say you're there with your spouse in the airport and you're delayed 5 hours, and your 2 kids are texting away like it's been 5 minutes, but they're just keep on texting, don't even know it's been 5 hours. But you and your spouse are upset. And what we do, which is unique to Allianz, provided we have the airline information within the policy, we track every flight that's out there that our insureds are part of. And with that tracking comes a notification when they've qualified for that benefit payout. In Classic, it is a 5 hours. So at 5 hour delay, they're going to get an alert on their cell phone and an email if they want one as well, according to their preferences. And that what that alert is going to show you, and show them rather, is that they now qualify. In this case, it's $100 per person for the delay. And we ask how would they like that money. So if it's me, my spouse, and 2 kids, that's $400 because I hit that benefit. And Allianz sends you a text, how would you like that $400, sir? And they will say the options are, 1, it can come through basic mail, right? And it gets there anywhere from 5 to 10 business days. Or they have the option to put it right on a debit card, right there within a matter of minutes, typically, depending on their bank. So it doesn't solve the situation, but it sure does make it a lot better when I've got $400 in my pocket. And lots of times people don't even realize that the travel protection they purchased includes that type of coverage. So it's typically a pleasant surprise that comes along the way. And again, it's all tied to making sure that flights are entered within the policy when they purchase it, or added once flights are purchased afterwards. So it's typically when a cruise is purchased, as an example, the flight are purchased later, it's okay. You could go ahead and add those into the policy on Agent Max online, and that will be added, and we'll be monitoring it. So pretty much anytime a flight is changed or added to a policy, it has to be done prior to 48 hours of departure. So anytime within that time, we'll be tracking it and monitoring it along the way. So that's neat. That's a unique benefit of Allianz, and we've heard nothing but high praise on it. But again, make sure to put that flight information in there, and that's in our Agent Max online site. Kids coverage free. That's another popular thing with Allianz purchasers. They love that, especially when they've got several that are under the age of 18, that a parent or grandparent just needs to be on the policy with them. And they will be able to come on free. They'll get all the benefits, as you see above here that we've talked about, but there's no cost involved in them. And that's 17 and under with a parent or a guardian. Parent or grandparent with them on the trip. And that's unlimited. So it's not a matchup of 1-for-1 like some others that we compete against. This is unlimited. So you can have the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family all coming together as long as they're 17 and under, and the parent or grandparent is with them on the policy, they're free. So is that always automatic payout when delayed? It typically is. We rely on a third party to. The question was, so is the automatic payout? Is the payout automatic when there is a delay? Again, just to reinforce, making sure that the flight information is in there prior to 48 hours of departure, and that flight information hasn't changed, because we don't track changes. So I hope that makes sense, because it's impossible for the provider at this point. Good question. So with these coverages here, the Classic and Premier, we have a 24-hour hotline available. So we're available 24/7, 365, and a concierge service that not many people take advantage of, but it's really great service, and we provide it for multiple large bank credit card companies. We have a separate division entirely devoted to that. So what does that mean? Well, if you've got a client who's particular and wants to get some things booked for themselves, and whether it be tours or reservations at a restaurant or tea times, etc., they can call directly to Allianz and ask for our concierge service, and we will go ahead and arrange those things for them. And also, we can actually do it for you. So if you have a really special client, they want you to do all this stuff. Well, we know you don't get compensated for typically making those types of reservations. We'll do it for you for free. So that type of thing, you would just send us an itinerary and ask us to book all that we can on this, and we will get on it for you. So it's a great opportunity, and it's free with actually all three of these plans here, just not included in the basic. So that covers the gist of these benefits here. And if there's other questions on these, certainly hold them to the end, and I'll answer anything you have on there. And if not, if time runs out, I'll be happy to respond via email or phone call. Now, classic with cancel anytime. This has become a pretty hot item right here, as you probably know. And essentially, with this program, someone can cancel for a million and one reasons, right? And I'll go over the ones that we have that are exclusions, but there are plenty of reasons for someone to cancel. The payout on when someone files for a claim within cancel anytime, it's 100%. They get compensated up to 100%, provided they file for a covered reason. And I'll get into the covered reasons in just a moment. But for a non-covered reason, that's not an exclusion, they'll get 80% back. Your commission is protected on this plan as well. So it has commission protection for all three of these plans. And in the case of classic with cancel anytime, the commission payout, commission protection payout rather, would be at 80% as well, just like the customer, unless it was for a covered reason. And then you will get 100% compensation for the commission protection. I'll get into more details on that in just a moment. But that's the gist of the classic with cancel anytime. It has to be purchased at initial deposit. This has just been modified a week and a half ago. We used to be able to sell it at on or before final payment, but it has just been changed to on the date of initial deposit. So I want to be very clear of that. The other thing is that it is the commission on that has gone down as well, and it varies depending on what your association with host agencies, et cetera, but the commission has gone down very much so within cancel anytime. Nothing else has changed on the other policies. I just want to be clear on that. But with this one, it's very, very difficult. Lots of competitors have taken it off the market entirely. We decided to keep it on, but we had to limit it down to what we just talked about. And we had to do it because the only way someone can buy this policy is through travel agents. And by us keeping it on the market, it's really for you to help offer a product, even though it's not the same product in those key area. It certainly will help relief for some of the folks out there. We hope to bring this back in a different version after we get through all this, after COVID is handled, hopefully soon. And we're going to review this hopefully within 90 days or so to see if we can come back to something more similar to the prior product. Stay tuned. So those are the main products here. With basic plan, this is really, I only recommend this really for domestic travel. Anybody going abroad really needs to have one of the other, the classic or the premier, in my opinion, but just because it's so much stronger. If you look at the comparisons and what the do's and don'ts of coverage are for basic, these three are all primary coverage, which means we pay first, and that speeds up the claim process, helps to prevent a lot of out-of-pocket costs and expenses should someone have claims abroad and so forth. Those three are primary coverages, where basic is not. What does secondary mean, which is what basic is? It means it's a reimbursement policy. So that's similar to like the credit cards. None of those are primary that I'm familiar with, and that receipts need to be saved and out-of-pocket expenses need to be, um, are going to be much higher. So with a primary policy, you're really doing right by the client. They're well protected. Lots of the cruise companies are secondary. So it's a whole different scenario when someone's getting medical treatment and you've got primary coverage versus secondary. It can be extraordinary, the cost and so forth that come along with that, especially when you're going, areas in Central America, the Caribbean, and so forth. Some demand, $5,000 deposit before the client can even be seen. With an Allianz protected traveler, we're going to go ahead and, provided it's a major injury, it's not just a twisted ankle or a bump and bruise, we can go ahead and give letters furnishing financial responsibility for your insured/client, that will help relieve that out-of-pocket expense. So these are some key differences between Allianz and supplier insurance, credit card coverage, etc. So I'll keep moving along here. Oops, let me shrink it down. Okay, so the second side here. Yep. Second side of this, as I zoom in. So we were talking about commission protection. You can see the first three plans have that, and that's up to 20% of the total non-refundable trip cost that you put in for the policy limit. So let's say, for example, you are insuring a $10,000 trip. What the commission protection will offer is the commission, should your traveler that purchased an Allianz policy decided to cancel their trip, in those scenarios, your commissions get pulled because the trip is canceled. What Allianz will do is we'll reimburse you for those commissions that got pulled from you. So, for example, in that $10,000 trip, we'll basically insure up to $2,000 in commissions for that particular trip. So once again, for every $10,000 of trip costs, non-refundable trip costs, we're going to provide up to $2,000 per 10,000 for you to offset the commissions lost because of the cancellation. I hope that makes sense. And that's great that not everybody offers that. As you know, there's been competitors out there that pulled commission protection, and we've seen a lot of gains from those scenarios because, one of the reasons why, or how I present this, is travel protection, not just travel insurance. And it's really protecting not only your clients, but it's protecting you as well with commission protection. Let's see. We'll talk about pre-existing in just a minute. These are all of our covered reasons, as you can see here. We have up to 28 different covered reasons for our plans. You can see which ones are covered for which policies all through here. With the Premier plan, one key benefit is, or a big key benefit, is hurricane warning. You can see down here, that's the only plan that has a hurricane warning. And with that hurricane warning, that is exclusively for destination only. So when you have a traveler who is interested in, let's just say, traveling to the Caribbean, and just before, you've got 24 hours prior to their departure time, and within that window, if NOAA says the named storm is going to hit their destination within 24 hours of their departure, they can cancel the trip and have a full claim approved for that. So that, again, is a great selling point for Premier for those folks that are worried about hurricane season and so forth. Go right to that and say this is a key benefit that's provided by Allianz for your destination in case something happens just before you leave. That does not cover anything for their home front. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you've probably seen the bullseye of many hurricanes that are headed our way. So it's certainly a hot button for us in the Southeast that the hurricane warnings are there, but we're very aware of the dangers and so forth with it. But that's one of the key benefits here, hurricane warning, which is great. Let's see what else. Okay, well, that's the key ones. Let me keep moving along here. So this is another look at what we just we're looking at a different screen, but it puts them side by side with a Premier, Classic, and Cancel Anytime. You can see one of the big differences here is the amount of coverage for trip cancellation and trip interruption. 10,000 and 15,000 for Classic with Cancel Anytime compared to the 100 and 150,000 for Premier and Classic. So this coverage here is about 10%. Well, it's exactly 10% of what these offer here. So those expensive trips out there that cost $25,000 per person, again, these are all per person amounts here that you see on the screen. That you've got a big $25,000 per person trip out there. The maximum they can insure would be $10,000 per person on Cancel Anytime. So that's another key difference here. Big trips, expensive places to go, right here. Luxury travel, Premier every time. And the Premier package is typically somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10% higher commission than Classic. So I'll say that again. Selling Premier is not only in your client's best interest, it is in yours because you get more money based off of it as well. So that's a big benefit. Okay. So Classic with Cancel Anytime exclusively. This is the update that we just talked about, is that this must be bought on the day of first deposit. The other thing that's coming, which is completely separate from our current situation, is that Kids Free benefit is going to end only on Classic with Cancel Anytime as of April 7th. So this is fast approaching, and you're not going to be able to sell it after, I think it's 4/7. Yeah, April 7th. So this is, again, only on our Classic with Cancel Anytime. Kids are flying free basically on our other policies that we talked about. So Classic and Premier. These are the exclusions for Cancel Anytime. People ask the question, is this a CFAR program? It's not a CFAR program, and that's why we call it a Cancel Anytime, and not for any reason. So if you look at the exclusions, these are them. Other reasons, you can cancel. But as you can see, as an epidemic, it's an excluded situation. So does that mean there's other situations that could come up that someone else could cancel? Yeah, sure, there's plenty. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of reasons why someone can cancel. I am super anxious and I don't feel as though I want to go on a vacation now. Okay, sounds good. It really comes down to that. But, stating it is because of the COVID-19. It can't be that reason. So, there's lots of different reasons. My pet's sick. My child's sick. I've had to change my plans because, the weather's not nice. There's a lot of different reasons that come on out there that people can cancel these and still get an approved claim. This is pretty cool. Our covered family is bigger than anybody else out there that I'm aware of. So what does that mean? So each of these folks here, these 12 different categories are coverable. So for example, if you've got, Aunt Sue who has a health condition that you're concerned with, and you'd want to be able to come back and interrupt your trip, half the way through it and come back and be bedside should she have to have, surgery or what have you, or you'd want to cancel it because something came up with grandma, or it covers pretty much everybody but cousins. If you look at the screen here, you got so many different people: nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, parents, of course, siblings, children. As in spouse, it covers husband, wife, domestic partner, or civil union partner as well, which is a great liberalization of that benefit, and cohabitant. So you got a roommate that's 18 years or older and you've been living with them for 12 consecutive months and can prove it. They can be a covered reason for you to cancel your trip or come back early on that trip. So incidentally, if you do come back, let's just say you learn about one of these covered family members that they're going to have surgery, and you're 5 days into your 10-day cruise. What does that cover? Well, Allianz is going to cover your trip back. The difference that 5 days, let's just say that you were not going to enjoy your trip, we're going to reimburse you for that. We'll get you safe and sound next to Aunt Sue's bed there to get things going and be that, be there for her in that scenario. So it's a pretty big benefit, and lots of folks don't realize that that's a key benefit out there. And one of the best practices that I love to pass along with the covered family is that is that when you've got that person that comes to your office or you speak with on the phone or what have you, and you offer them the coverage or you recommend them the coverage, right? And they say, no, I'm great. I'm in fantastic shape. I run a triathlon every 3 weeks and yada, yada, yada. And the best practice I picked up from an agent was, gosh, that's awesome. I'm glad you're in such great shape. But there are folks out there that I wanted to, draw to your attention that you might have a family member, an extended family member, that may cause you to change your travel plans. And if that's the case, would you want to either cancel your trip or come back early on your trip to be bedside by them? If you have an aunt, an uncle, or a sister, brother, or this whole extended family that if anybody got into like a car accident or had a medical condition and you want to be there for them, wouldn't you want to be there for them? And then they pause just like that. So what that does is take some of the pressure off of that individual and helps them visualize, what if this happened? Yeah, you know what? Let me get that. And just remember that buying a insurance policy with us, you have 15 days to cancel it and get the full refund back. So that shouldn't be your first selling point, but it might be your last one, saying that, hey, you know what? Since you're having such a tough time deciding whether this policy is right for you, why don't you go ahead and purchase it now? And if for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you want to cancel it and get your money back, you have up to, I'd just say 2 weeks, and we'll get every penny back for you. Now, there are some states out there that have a much more liberal policy, but it really depends on the state. So I hope that's helpful, but that's a great best practice that I picked up along the way. I love to share on this slide. So a pre-existing medical condition. So essentially, reading the top line here is important. This is really, really critical that people understand exactly what this is, because it can really be a big problem if we're not aware of pre-existing conditions and making sure that they qualify for the pre-existing medical condition waiver. So the definition is that it's an illness or injury that exhibited symptoms or was treated for anytime 120 days prior to purchasing the plan. So that's a really key point to understand and make sure that you're fully aware of how that works out. So it's sometimes uncomfortable, usually, to ask someone if they have a pre-existing condition. But sometimes talking about the covered family and saying, hey, one of the reasons why my clients purchased the travel protection is not only for their own well-being, but for the well-being of their loved ones. And they have an extended family within Allianz as far as coverage is concerned. And if any of them has a pre-existing medical condition that you may or may not be aware of, you'd want to get this purchased pretty quickly so we can avoid any pre-existing condition and have it covered within the policy. So how do we get it to waiving the pre-existing medical condition? Well, great question, Steve. First one is the policy was purchased within 14 days of the initial trip deposit. Now, this is for Classic and Premier. Okay, so this is very, very important right here. And they have to be a U.S. resident when the policy was purchased. They have to be medically able to travel when the policy was purchased. So can't be buying from the hospital bed and assuming that this is covered. So, and then the whole full non-refundable trip costs need to be covered in it. So you can't exclude certain parts of the journey. It has to be all in there. So those are the 4 key characteristics for Classic and Premier here to make sure that any pre-existing medical condition would be waived because those qualifications are met. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. If for whatever reason they delay and they don't buy a policy within 14 days, let's just say it takes them 3 weeks to finally make up their mind and get this, in that scenario, they will not be covered for pre-existing medical waiver. So they will be open to scrutiny based off of a pre-existing condition. So how does that work? Well, let's just say we've got, Grandma Sue's going on that trip, and she goes on the cruise line, and lo and behold, she has a medical issue. We look at the medical issue, and as we review all of our cases, we look to see in these scenarios, did they have pre-existing medical condition waiver? Oh, they did not. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and look at medical records for the prior 120 days of purchasing the policy. Within that medical history, we review to see if there was anything that could have led to that scenario. And if there is, we question it and understand it. So there's a completely different path if they did have the pre-existing waiver. Our search stops right there. We just go ahead and administer the claim, help Grandma Sue out, and making sure that she's well taken care of and move along. Now we're gonna don't get me wrong here. We're gonna give her the care and service that she needs regardless. We're gonna get things going and get her set up. But with a pre-existing waiver, her prior condition will not come into play given that scenario. Well, I hope that makes sense. I can answer questions on this too. I want to make sure we all get this, okay? And here are the covered reasons once again. The hurricane warning, only Premier. But these are our areas we already covered. I just wanted to pop them in there again. The Group Advantage Plan, this is a really, really popular plan for those groups out there. Key components of a group plan is that it's non-age branded, which is huge. So if you're 17 or 70, it doesn't matter. You're not going to pay more if you're 70 than 17 in this. It's just for groups of 10 or more. So non-age branded, which is huge. You have pre-existing medical condition waiver available up until final payment, which is huge. And then $50K in primary medical on this plan as well. So it's really aggressive, very competitive program, and can only be booked on our Agent Max 2.0 version, which is a client version that needs to be downloaded into a desktop or a laptop to be able to have access to it. You can't access it through Agent Max online, and you can't do it over the phone at this point. We're hoping to have that updated later on in the summer of this year, provided everything goes well, and be able to book it that way. But as of now, that's the only way you can book it. Great program. It works for some, not for all, of course, but it's a pretty cool program that provides all these benefits here: emergency medical, primary, up to $250,000 in emergency transportation, and so forth. So it's very extensive and very, very, very competitively priced. So I encourage you all to take a quick look into it and see if there's something that folks qualify for here. Annual plans. Some folks like these, some don't. The professional travel program here on the far right, that's for agents only. Okay, so you all can purchase this. It's $135 a year, which is very cheap. No commissions available on this, unfortunately. These other plans, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the plans, right? Each of those are commissionable, and the commission on those is 20%. Just like the group plan, that is 20% as well. If you look at these areas, for example, if you want to get this up, hate when I do that. So if you wanted to upgrade to like the annual deluxe plan and get $3,000, so this top number, trip cancellation and interruption, this is an annual amount. Everything else down here is per trip. And these policies kick in once you are 100 miles or more away from your home. So if you rented a car and you're driving to the ocean and you are going more than 100 miles away, these would kick in, and you would be these options would be available for you. These benefits would be available to you. So, for example, if you want to upgrade and get the $3,000 plan per year, because $2,000 is pretty small for people that travel quite a bit for a whole year. So if you upgrade to this one, cost would be $275. And less 20% because you get commissioned on it. So that's right, $225 or so, somewhere in there, probably a little less than that. And that's what the benefits would be for you. Within both of these plans, the executive and deluxe plan, you do get rental car protection, and it's primary, which is great, up to $45,000. So essentially, that's very, very, very similar to the rental car damage waiver, and that's what comes along with that program. This is what I think most of you have been waiting for here, the change policy travel dates. So this is current as of last week, and nothing's changed on it that I'm aware of. So essentially, you can change a policy date of a current policy that maybe got bumped out because of travel or because of the cruise ship gave a voucher and it has to be used within a year, etc. Well, yes, you can change the policy date as long as a claim is not filed and the departure date has not come and gone. This can be done directly on Agent Max, so you don't have to make a phone call, you don't have to send an email. It can be done within a minute and on Agent Max, and just putting in either the new travel dates if you have them, or you could just put a placeholder in there for different dates that are extended out within 770 days of the purchase, original date of purchase. So they have 770 days to, I guess, reuse a plan, and that using that plan is very flexible. So it can be for any dollar amount, any destination, and essentially what you paid for that original plan will go into the cost of the new plan. If the original plan is more expensive, then they'll get a refund. If it's more expensive, the trip, then they'll pay the additional, just like adding on to a current trip and so forth. So it's very, very flexible and something that we provide. I think it's pretty. I know it's strong in the market and maybe the best one out there, comparing it to competition on it. But anyhow, it's very it's awesome to be able to do this and very easy to do with an Agent Max. But if we miss the travel dates that already happened, you can go ahead and actually send an email in. Once the client has the new travel dates. So let's just say, you had a trip that left on March 15th. Well, no problem. That plan is not going to expire. All you need to do is save the cancellation, so the cancellation documentation, and be able to provide that to us at sales support at allianzassistance.com once you have the new travel dates, keeping in mind that 770-day expiration from the original purchase date. But once you have that, send it along with the policy number, proof of the original trip cancellation, and the invoice for the new trip, and we'll get that all squared away for you. If you need to go beyond the 770, there's documentation here of what you need to do to go ahead and apply for that. If that situation comes up, you're more than welcome to contact me or another Allianz rep, and happy to help. Cancel any time exclusions. We already talked about these. Policy refunds. So yes, because of some pressure from certain states that will remain nameless, we've had to put in place a policy refund availability, and essentially started last week. And for a temporary period, we're going to offer refunds if a customer's supplier cancels the trip due to COVID-19. Now, they can cancel their refund, like I said, within 15 days of purchase, regardless of any situation. If it gets beyond that, then they would have to have that supplier. The supplier would have to have canceled for COVID-19, and then they could apply for a refund. In that scenario, unfortunately would be the commissions would be pulled on that because the policy is no longer valid. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news when it comes to that, but this is something that we didn't come up with on our own. It was some pressure from certain states that made this something that we had to do. So that's really the situation on this. And a lot of these things that are changing and morphing right now because of the situation are susceptible to change in the future as well. So how long this goes on for, I don't know. It's anyone's guess. And these other policy changes that we've had, not sure, because we live in very uncertain times, as we all know. And then why travel protection? This is some quick slides and show you a few statistics that really help people really think about what the dangers are without travel protection. and saying these are some things that help with a peace of mind while you're traveling. But one key thing on this slide that jumps out at me, gosh, over 116,000 flight cancellations. And this is within 1 year in 2018. Now, these are, very valid stats with the Bureau of Transportation and NOAA. So this tells you a little bit. I mean, 15 named storms seems light now, including winter storms that are named now. So that these all come into play. And here's a few more. This one is big because if you look at this, nearly 2 out of 3 international travelers report a health problem during their trip. So almost 2 out of 3 travelers that go internationally are going to report a problem with their health. That's a big number, and that really shocked me. That was an eyebrow raiser. And this is through GBTA. So these are the sources that we're using for this. And those are big numbers and something that you could certainly present to a client.
Hey, Steve, can we get to the question part? Do we have?
Sure. Yeah, fire away.
Because I'm sure all of our professionals they know the importance of why we're purchasing travel insurance, and I'm sure there's lots of other features, but I want to make sure that their answers are there. Just
absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going over some of the questions that were asked here. There was a question about. Okay, so is it always an automatic payout when the flight is delayed?
That situation depends on a third party that we work with, but in order for that to be qualified, their flight information has to be entered and updated with any changes within Agent Max.
Okay, and you just Agent Max is the online or the app, or you have to download the software?
So Agent Max Online is one version, which is the upgraded one, and very easy and simple to use, very powerful, constantly being updated. So that's the one we always recommend. The older one was the Agent Max Client, which would be a download and does not work on Mac. So that's going to be retired here pretty soon, and it will only be Agent Max Online, and I can hardly wait for that day.
And the software, the only reason to use it right now is if you're looking for a group policy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You talked about the kids coverage, the change of the kids coverage in the cancel for any time the policy, right? So after April 7th,
yes, sir.
What they will no longer be free,
right? Okay. And they'll count just as an adult, so they'd be whatever the 18-year-old I think is the cost for that.
Okay, and I think you answered the cancel anytime has to be purchased with initial deposit. So same day, the date, not 24 hours, same calendar date that you've made the initial deposit.
Correct.
Can you later update the amount if something changed?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Sorry, going over some of the questions. Someone was saying that when they look on the Allianz agent site, they see basic, classic, latitude, and essential. How does that compare with your presentation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And since we deal with so many different companies and there's so many different folks, I'm assuming that they're on this webinar. There's different plans that we have out there that aren't available to everyone. So part of that is negotiated with the agreement that we have with the host agency. And so therefore there's going to be varying policies out there. Should you have questions on that, please reach out to Allianz directly and we can help you out directly. If you're in my territory, I'm really happy to help you. I'm inundated right now with a lot of different calls and heavy email volume and so forth, but I'd be happy to do what I can to get you with the right people to help understand a little bit more. And email me if you like. There's no question, no problem at this point, but it may be a delay depending on how many I get that I'm already backlogged. So I'll do what I can to help you out.
Okay. Was the commission protection based? Okay, so the commission protection is on the Premier or just on the Premier?
That's on Premier and Classic with cancel anytime.
Okay. Now, if a client cancels the trip, but they have to submit a claim in order to get the we need to get the commission. Can you tell us how does that work? What's the process?
Sure, sure.
How would I
Yep,
get my commission?
yep. Good question. So the process is this: the client files a claim. The claim gets reviewed and approved. It must be approved in order to get commission protection. So we'll be paying out on that claim. And once that's approved, we'll review the claim that the agent puts in for commission protection, which is a simple one-page document, and it's on Agent Max Online.
Okay. So if for our specific situation right now with COVID-19, if the cruise line canceled, if my client got a refund, if he has a voucher and he's pretty much not submitting a claim to insurance because he settled it with the airline, the cruise line, whatever, I can't submit a request for commission protection, right?
Right. So in that scenario, I think the best thing would be to push that policy out and for a later booking. So you maintain the full value of the policy and for future travels. And that way you maintain your commission, right? And they maintain the protection.
Okay. Now, I saw some of the policies are covered under work-related reasons, right? I think the Premier,
No, it would be classic.
the Classic has, is it an add-on or that's included?
Well, there's an add-on, and it can only be added on to classic
Okay.
for work. Let me see if I got that slide here. Is that something you want me to show up on the screen here?
Yeah, sure. Let's.
Let's see. I don't know if I have a dedicated slide to it. Wait a second here. Come on. Oh.
I think I saw something with.
Yeah, right here. Required to work.
Okay.
So there's an add-on. It's going to obviously be more expensive, but something happens within the work environment where someone loses their job. It can't be because they were terminated for poor performance or something like that, but layoffs and things of that nature would be a key component, especially now. And unfortunately, what we're faced with, it might be worth considering pricing that out.
So if I had a basic program with cancel anytime and I added the work-related, and now my work says you can't travel, you're not allowed to travel, it's a new company policy, or I'm a first responder or a medical profession and I can't go. In that situation, will the client be able to claim it under a covered reason?
Yes, given the circumstances you just said right there. Now, I'm very careful in responding to certain scenarios just because we all know every claim stands on itself. And there may be other extenuating circumstances that one person faces different than another. But from what you just told me, it's worth getting that required to work.
Okay, so yeah, that's really important. I always tell my clients, even the person that you're going to talk to over the phone can't say yes for sure your
Yeah.
claim is going to be accepted. They have people who need to check, and only then, once you file a claim, they will make sure they will check if you're eligible or not. We can never promise that
Right.
yes, this is for sure you're going to get your money back, or yes, it's a covered reason.
Right. I'll tell you what. I always suggest this when this topic comes up is that if you ever get into a situation that you're not comfortable with as a travel advisor, always refer them to Allianz directly. And that way it removes you out of the scenario, because that's the last place anyone would want to be, is trying to answer an insurance question when you don't have all the answers. I don't guess if I'm not 100% on an answer for you all or anybody else I'm dealing with. I say I'm going to table this and I'll get back with you when I'm 100% on the answer, because it's just that important. So, words of advice.
Okay. The grandparents, do they have to share the same home address when they're getting the kids for free? How do we
Oh
deal?
no.
So when we create the policy and we have grandparents and kids,
Mm-hmm.
we enter the address of the grandparents?
That's right. Yeah, that's who you're purchasing it from.
Okay.
And if the parents are going, you'd have a separate policy for them because they're a different residence. We love to have it in different. Every residence has their own policy. Sometimes we can bend that a little bit if they're in the same state.
Okay. Someone was asking if the slide presentation will be available after the video. Um,
Well, no, it won't. The whole thing will not, but there are certain parts I can pass along and distribute if there's certain requests that we'd
Maybe
like.
a comparison, or we'll figure it out. See what you can, and but yeah, I understand that some information can't be shared. Um, okay, let's see. This is a long one. If cancel anytime must be purchased on the initial deposit date, what happens if the client comes to us and already purchased their flights? Um, well, if again has to be purchased, if we want to cancel for any reason, that's also I assume, right? It's a key feature. Everything has to be booked at the same time and preferably by you.
Yeah, so the initial that would be the initial deposit of the trip, because flying to, let's just say, Bermuda, right? You've got to have it on that date of purchase.
Right. So yeah, tell your clients, explain to them again. It's a product that no one can purchase. They can only purchase it through travel agents. So make sure that they don't book their own stuff. They have to book it through you. Again, use it to your advantage. Um, Annual policies for non-agent. Yes, it was in the slide, right? There is for corporate people. There are annual policies for non-travel agents.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So you could go back to the slides, the video later, and you can see them. When the supplier cancels the trip, what documentation do you need from us to send the client a refund? Some tour operators are not calling it canceled since they're only offering a credit.
It's starting to get really tricky, right, as far as how that's getting worked out, because if they're getting a credit, oh boy, and then it opens up all different can of worms for fraud, and I never like that's an ugly word, right? And so when a scenario comes up where, let's just say, an airline's offering a credit out there, right, and they have to use it by the end of the year, let's say, a client, after the expiration of that credit, can prove that it expired, they did not use it, they could submit a claim for that. So any supplier that offers credit that expires at that time, after it expires, a client can go ahead and file a claim for that.
But that's only if it's covered. They have the right coverage. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for clarifying that.
yeah.
Yes.
And then we said if the grandchildren, they live in another state, can they still be listed on the grandparents' policy?
Uh, they're not supposed to. I can't really comment on that. They've got to be on the same policy. So if I can't really, that's all I can say is that they have to be on the same policy.
I understand. Let me see if I wrote some things. We talked about commission protection. We talked about the trip delay. We talked about agent max. I think everything that I wrote down. So the change the date, you have about 2 years, a little over 2 years to change, right? 770 days. Okay, another question came in. A client has Premier plan, but the supplier goes bankrupt. Okay, what happens with bankruptcy with the
Great
current
point.
policies?
Yeah, great point. Now, the bankruptcy, it's important to buy a classic or premier plan within 14 days of initial deposit, not only for pre-existing medical condition, but also for bankruptcy coverage. Because if you miss that window, you're not going to be covered for a bankruptcy. Now, when we look at bankruptcy, especially in this day and age where we are, it's not just filing for bankruptcy protection, but in our terms, it is ceasing operations. Okay, so there's a big difference there. Someone files for a company files for Chapter 11, let's say, to restructure their debt. They're not ceasing operations; they're still doing their business. So that would not be a covered reason for us to refund somebody for that.
Right, and is there a list of suppliers that are protected, or is there a list of not protected? Like how do we know?
Absolutely. So on Agent Max, you'll see a list of our covered suppliers, a link down at the middle of the page, down towards the bottom of the first page that you come on to after you sign in. It'll say covered suppliers on the bottom there. And you can just click on that, and that gets updated. So that was recently updated last week. And, I fear there's more updating to be done. So I would take a look at that and understand what bankruptcy coverage and protection really is, and making sure that you're all understanding and are well versed on some of the coverages there. But I'm happy to give more explanation on it if need be.
Okay, great. A question about group policy. The travelers, they don't have to be in the same state, right? On a group
Right.
policy?
That's a great question. Yeah. Essentially anybody, they don't have to know each other. They just have to share the majority of the itinerary, quite frankly. So they can do pre and post. They can all have their own separate credit cards. They can all pay at different times. And once it's 10 or more, you're all set. And it's easy to quote as can be. So essentially you've got, let's just say it's a $2,500 trip, and you realize that the group insurance is going to cost $132 per person. You can just go ahead and lump that all in together, and it's so easy to quote, and you don't have to worry about ages or anything. And people pay at their own pace.
Okay.
With pre-existing condition until that final payment.
Okay, great. I think we kind of answered this, but if we purchase Classic with cancel anytime, the insurance says cruise, and then we add flights and hotels, we can just we add the amounts. It doesn't matter if the initial was a cruise or suppliers. We can, right? As long as we purchase the initial policy the day that we made the initial payments, what we add later, we can just update.
Yeah, you can update it. Just remember that's a low threshold on as far as coverage amounts for cancel anytime.
$10,000 per person.
Huh?
$10,000 per person for a cancel for any reason, right?
Yep, cancel anytime. We don't have yeah, everyone makes that mistakes, at least a couple times, but cancel anytime.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I think we answered most of the questions that we had before, if not all of them. I would appreciate if you have some information that I can post, maybe a few links to the
Sure.
agent X. If someone is not selling Allianz, who they need to contact, some information. Of course, if you are with a host, reach out to your host. I'm sure most of the hosts, if not all of them, they have an agreement with Allianz, being one of the bigger insurance companies around. Anything that you want to add to summarize?
Yeah, sure. Once again, hey Roy, thank you so much for reaching out. It's really helpful to have an audience like this. That I know you guys are all thirsting for information, and I know because I get calls all day long, texts all day long, and emails and Facebook message. And I really appreciate you. From Allianz to you, and we really appreciate you. And we do things like this cancel anytime product to keep it around for you. While it seems like it's a diminished product, and it is, it's still there and available where others have pulled it. But you can friend me on Facebook if you like, and it's an easy way to get in touch with me with Messenger and so forth. And I share some things on Facebook, the documents like a couple of them that you saw here in the slide deck, that'll help you keep updated, and links as well as far as changing information for Allianz is concerned. I post a link there, and you're welcome to refer to it and click on it, save it as a bookmark, and be able to refer back to it as the most updated information. But my Facebook handle is Steve Lowe, LOWE -Allianz. And you can get me that way, and I'm happy to help you out in any way I can, and at least point you in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone. Tomorrow we have another session, more updates to come. Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye.